All right, we're in Woodside. We've got Margot. She can actually film this time. You got to check out our podcast from yesterday. Margot was at the game. She's not mic'd up today, so I don't think she's going to be talking unless I make her laugh. But we got to talk about 49ers, Seahawks, and how San Francisco can fix this offensively. I've been texting with a couple coaches who know the X's and O's better than I do, and I'm running my separation theories around them. We know the 49ers rank dead last in the NFL, number 32 in average separation at the time of catch, 3 yards flat. And the only other teams down at the bottom are bad teams. The 49ers are actually the only team with a 500 record in that group. So they're not operating with enough space offensively. I think it's clear from there. And when I talk to some of these coaches, they're noticing the same thing. And they even threw a stat back at me. Jawan Jennings had 4 catches in this game with less than a yard of separation from the nearest defender, which is the most catches in one game of that caliber by any NFL receiver this season. So that's an unprecedented stat for this season. Brock Purdy and Jawan Jennings are really having to force the ball into extremely tight windows. We said they had to put on their Superman cape to make things happen for the 49ers. Brock Purdy and Jawan Jennings are doing stuff statistically that we hadn't seen yet in this NFL year, and it's no sustainable way to live. One idea tossed to me to improve the 49ers separation had been to run more bunch formations. That they're actually going to need to manufacture some of this separation, because what we saw on Sunday was Mike McDonald, who's Seattle's coach, defensive mind. He shut down San Francisco against the with the Baltimore Ravens as their defensive coordinator last year. Mike McDonald was one step ahead of Shanahan at so many junctures in this game. 49ers try to run the play action bootleg. Seattle had a defender there setting the edge, coming off the edge, ready to knock the pass away. Turned into danger zone for the 49ers. 49ers try to run some of their underneath routes to Christian McCaffrey. Seattle would have linebackers dropping back or safeties coming down to take that play away from San Francisco as well. So Shanahan, to counter-adjust appropriately, to move to that level where the 49ers are actually scheming with space, to where there are gimme plays, which you have to sustainably operate an offense, because you can't just have the really difficult ones. You only have so many bullets in that regard. I think Shanahan's going to have to manufacture some space. And the bunch formations, trips formations, whatever you want to call it, but guys closer to the linemen on the line of scrimmage in a way that makes the defense think about who's going to go which way coming off that snap. That's going to be something the 49ers might have to run more of against this coming weekend when they face the Green Bay Packers. Now, the game this week is such a pivotal matchup. If the 49ers win, they will have over a 50% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, they're going to have about a 15% chance to make the playoffs. You rarely see a delta this big, this relatively early in the season. This is still week 12. This is not like we're in week 16 or week 17. So for one game to be the swing between 15 and 50+% is absolutely massive. And what that means is that the 49ers' backs are up against the wall right now. This is a game that they need to find a way to win. You talk about manufacturing separation, receiving wise, they need to manufacture a win. And for that, Kyle Shanahan's got to rediscover the fastball. Separation is going to be a big part of it for San Francisco, but so is personnel. And they didn't have George Kittle in the game last week. And he's so important. We're passing the Stanford dish, by the way. Why don't you pan toward that, Margot? Check out the dish. It's a big satellite dish. So we used to hike up to that when I went to Stanford. And it used to be more green in the springtime. Now it's not springtime. We're in the fall, moving into winter. So it's pretty arid out here. Anyway, George Kittle should be back in this game for the 49ers because of the importance of it. We had discussed the risk reward of playing somebody like George Kittle in the game against Seattle. And obviously the 49ers would like to win, but it wasn't the end of the world if they lost. But now moving forward, it gets close to the 49ers being in complete and utter desperation mode if they lose. So somebody like Kittle, who might have been good to go had it been a playoff game last week against Seattle, probably will be good to go, because this is as close as you can get to a playoff game in Week 12 with the swing facing the 49ers. And somebody like Kittle, when you talk about tying together the 49ers run game and the pass game, is just such an important weapon, because everybody talking about the 49ers weren't themselves running. They were struggling to run against Seattle. Well, of course they were struggling to run if they couldn't separate in the pass game, because the pass game feeds the run game. That's how you get the numbers in your favor. So when you can't effectively separate in the pass game, when the schematics there are not conducive to the layups on which the 49ers are reliant, then the defense is going to be on its toes and they're going to be crashing the run game, and that's going to be harder to execute. So George Kittle's at the intersection of both of these things. He's a guy that can either run block, or he can go out for a pass pattern at the level of a wide receiver one. He can run block at the level of a lineman, and he can be deployed on pass patterns at the level of a top wideout. When you don't have him in the game, big trouble can happen. And that's exactly what we saw. And the 49ers didn't try to make up for it correctly. They tried to throw Jalen Moore in there. And Jalen Moore is an offensive lineman. So he plays 12 snaps at tight end. Jalen is not going to give you the receiving threat that George Kittle gave you. All of a sudden, the adaptable nature of the offense is severely compromised. Anyway, long story short, I would expect Kittle to play, because the 49ers are, let's just call it desperation mode. Let's call it back up against the wall. That's where they're at this week. I do think that George is going to play, and I do think that should make Kyle Shanahan's job as a play caller easier. But he still has to go back to his creative roots, has to self-scout, analyze what he thinks can get guys open, because the numbers in that regard simply have not been good enough for the 49ers. They did not run a sustainable ship against the Seattle Seahawks, and it's got to be more sustainable. One last example that I can give you is the 3rd and 11 conversion to Juwan Jennings when he dragged 4 guys across the line to gain. That came to play after the 49ers got blown up in the run game on 3rd and 1. Jake Brendel got blown up, and he committed a holding penalty on the play. So they converted the 3rd and 1, but the penalty nullified it for the 49ers. Lane change happening here. So they converted 3rd and 1, but the penalty nullified it for the 49ers. So they had to go to 3rd and 11, and to convert the 3rd and 11, the 49ers had to dig deep into their bag of tricks to a play that barely worked. So it was one of their best plays of the game. They were trailing in the 4th quarter or late in the 3rd quarter, whenever it was. They needed that play, so they went to that, one of the best they had. They threw some of their top schematics at Seattle. And even those schematics were force the ball into a tight window and have Juwan Jennings play Superman. So that wasn't available to them in the subsequent drive when they were trying to seal the game, because you had already used that bullet. And that shows you the domino effect of these things on an offense. If you're having to strain and strain and strain and use your top strain plays before you'd like to use them for whatever reason, and it was because of the Brendel holding penalty in this game, then you're going to run out of those bullets when you truly need to fire later on. And then the 49ers couldn't close the game when they needed to pick up that first down. So that's where the 49ers just need to be better. More gimmies needed, more separation needed, and then you'll see the domino effect. Instead of it working against them, snowballing against them, things can snowball for them when they play the Green Bay Packers in a massive, massive game this week. Remember it, bunch formations and return to creativity. It all goes hand in hand. Talk to you guys soon.